Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the iFraud Foundation's Defense Toolkit Series. This is the second in a three-part series to bring innovation, uh, processes, and technologies to stakeholders, which can be used to help mitigate risk and combat insurance fraud. So today, I'm excited to have Nate Curtis from Clearspeed presenting on their incredible technology. It was quite fortuitous that I happened to run into Nate at the Antifraud conference in Monterey, California. And when he told me what he did and what the technology was doing, I was extremely excited. And I've immediately thought about how this could help us in mitigating risk and fighting fraud here in our market. And I was so excited that I went and emailed my contact at my trusted construction broker to ask him what his thoughts were, and he was equally excited, especially after we saw what you're going to see today. So, from their origin story to their actual applications in the insurance market today, Clearspeed made an impression, and hopefully you'll see the same value we did. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please submit them, and we'll address as many as possible towards the end. If there are any that we don't have time to get to, we'll send them out. We'll send out the answers via email. So that said, I'm going to turn it over to Nate Curtis.
All right. Thank you so much, Damien. And thanks, folks, for joining. A lot of things you could do with your Thursday morning, and I appreciate you choosing to spend the time here with us. Yeah, Damien, appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to this audience about Clearspeed. We are very passionate about the technology. We're very passionate about the impact that it's going to have on society, particularly as we think about government, defense, and security, where our technology started, and then a lot of the burgeoning use cases around insurance and banking and things of that nature. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and step through a couple slides here. And because our technology is probably going to be unlike anything that you have seen or heard of before, I'm sure that there will be questions. If there's any point in the presentation, Damien, where you're getting questions and it might be helpful for me to pause and discuss a certain aspect of the technology or the use case, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. What I'm going to do is pop into screen share mode here. And if you will just give me a thumbs up and let me know if and when you're able to see my screen, Damien.
You're good.
Okay, excellent. All right, so I appreciate the introduction. Just a little background about me before I jump in. So, my name is Nate. I'm a national sales director at Clearspeed. Before I came to Clearspeed, I spent about 10 years in the insurance industry. So I worked at Liberty Mutual Insurance in across the Safeco and the Liberty Mutual brands, for those of you who are familiar with Liberty. And prior to that, I was in the Navy. So I was a naval officer working at the Pentagon. And so I have kind of a unique, I guess, background relative to many people who kind of ended up in the insurance space. But when I saw the technology, the Clearspeed technology, and what it was doing, the potential that it had to transform insurance, I was extremely eager to get behind this movement, to help to bring this technology into the insurance sector, where I had spent many years grappling with a lot of the problems that I'm sure that many of you are familiar with: fraud, waste, abuse, a lack of trust and transparency between the customer and the carrier. And Clearspeed is a novel technology that solves for many of those things in a very unique way. But before I jump into the technology itself and how it works, I think it's a really neat backstory. So I love talking about the origin story of Clearspeed because it's unlike probably any other backstory you've heard as you've looked at other technologies in the marketplace. Clearspeed began as a military technology. So we were born out of a need to save U.S. and coalition lives in wartime scenarios, downrange in places like Afghanistan. So for anyone here on the call who might be familiar with the term a green on blue attack, if anybody has a military background, this is an incident in which an Afghani force that's working with U.S. and coalition forces, so somebody who has been vetted and trusted to operate alongside Marines or U.S. Army personnel, that person has been compromised in some way. So they're working with the enemy, they're working with an adversary. And when the bullets start to fly, they train their rifles on US or coalition forces and lives are lost. So there was an incident in which that happened, and our CEO and founder, he lost his best friend, who was a Marine Special Operations team leader. He lost his life to a green on blue incident. Someone that we thought we could trust, an Afghani who we put a rifle in their hands, we sent them downrange to operate in one of these far flung reaches of Afghanistan. When the bullets started to fly, trained his rifle on our CEO's best friend, and he lost his life. So out of that circumstance, the thought arose, well, there's got to be a better way, right? The intelligence community can only do so much. There's only so much information that's available. Some of these people, many of these people that we were operating with, these are people who come from small rural villages in very remote regions of Afghanistan. They don't have social media presences. There's a lack of information about their background. So many of them couldn't even read or write. So voice became the medium that we thought, is there something in the voice? Could we ask them a couple questions, just simple yes, no questions, regardless of what language they speak, whether it's Pashto or Dari or some native dialect? Could we ask them a question, and from a simple yes, no response, is there something in the voice that would tell us that we can trust that response or we cannot? And that is ultimately what we ended up doing. We developed a technology that was able to use simple, automated, scalable questionnaires that we could develop in any language, play those for an individual, and ask them questions like, have you worked with the Taliban in the past? Have you ever plotted against US or coalition forces? Do you have any family members that are part of a terrorist organization? And from that simple spoken yes or no response, we could tell with an extremely high degree of accuracy if we could trust that response and put a rifle in that person's hands and send them downrange to operate alongside a Marine Special Operations team, or if we needed to screen them out, or if we needed to do an additional level of investigation before we put weapons in their hands and trusted them with US and coalition troop lives. And that is exactly how it was used, and it was proven to a very high degree of efficacy to work exactly as we wanted it to. And we actively screened out terrorists or people who were plotting with terrorists. And that's where we developed our first use case for Clearspeed, was downrange in Afghanistan, saving US and coalition lives. So from that, we thought, where else do we have a massive problem with trust? What other industries are plagued with this problem where you have a small cohort of bad actors that are ruining trust for the honest majority? And obviously insurance was a clear answer. Whether it's in claims, whether it's in underwriting, whether you're talking about auto physical damage claims, bodily injury claims, workers' compensation claims, this was a common problem. So different front lines, but the same need for trust exists. And that is what Clearspeed was designed to solve. Clearspeed was designed to solve that very problem that the insurance industry deals with on a daily basis. So that's just a little bit about the background and the origin story of Clearspeed, which I think is unique and very interesting. But Clearspeed, we work in the government. We work across the Department of Defense or Department of War. We have relationships across many different three-letter agencies. And then, of course, we work in the insurance space. We have global partnerships with some of the largest insurance carriers in the world, to the likes of Allianz and Zurich. And so what we see across all of these different use cases, all these different organizations, is a common thread where organizations are always trying to balance the trade-off between moving quickly when they're assessing a risk or making a decision, and accuracy when they're evaluating that risk. And there's been enormous infrastructure that has been set up to ascertain if you can trust what a customer is telling you in these critical circumstances where many, many dollars or even lives are on the line. And the infrastructure that's been set up to address that has a couple shortfalls that we've seen. So risk assessment is oftentimes very expensive and time intensive, or oftentimes there are gaps in the data that you have, or it's lagging, it's incomplete or inconsistent. And then where we have predictive models, and I know this very well coming from the insurance space because I built these predictive models, there's always an error term. It's based on historical data. There's always instances in which we're getting it wrong. There's false positives, there's false negatives. It's not a specific point in time intelligence. It's not specific to that individual in that transaction. That is exactly where Clearspeed has come in to solve for this problem, this tension, this elasticity between speed and accuracy when we're assessing risk. So, what is Clearspeed? I've told you enough about the backstory and the problem that it solves. Clearspeed reduces the strain on insurers by providing an in the moment risk intelligence signal that you can trust so you can move forward faster. And the way to think about this is in the sound wave of the human voice, there are tens of thousands of attributes that can manifest in human speech. Out of those tens of thousands of attributes, there are tens of attributes that will manifest invariably when somebody's fight or flight response kicks in. Our invention, our technology, is that we have the ability to scalably, agnostically, in an unbiased fashion, without requiring any kind of baseline in the voice, we have the ability to isolate, measure, and score when those attributes manifest in somebody's verbal response. And we can do that from extracting them from automated voice questionnaires to simple yes no questions. So these are scalable. They can be conducted in any language in the world. We currently have them in over 60 languages operationally in over 37 countries, and this technology works the exact same. So all we require in order to determine if somebody's response can be trusted to that automated question, that yes no question, is that 300 millisecond burst of energy from their voice, that utterance of yes or no. That's the only portion that we capture. We don't know anything about the individual. We don't know their age, their gender, their credit score. We don't know anything about their history. All we know is that spoken response. We capture that audio to the question, which is the stimulus, and we can tell with almost 100% accuracy if their fight or flight response kicked in when they said yes or no to that question. So that is our invention. And the way that we operationalize this, because I think this is an important piece to tie everything together, we design these questions around any interaction that our client needs to ascertain a high degree of trust from the individual. So I'll share an example in the workers' comp space here in a minute, but if you can imagine that we're talking about return to work for workers' compensation, and somebody has been on a temporary total disability claim for, let's say, 10 weeks. At that point, a carrier might want to send a questionnaire to that injured worker's phone and say, hey, have you performed any work for which you were paid since your injury? And maybe they also want to ask, have you received any income, including from self-employment, since your injury? And maybe a third question, have you intentionally resumed any physical activity that your doctor advised you not to engage with since your injury? So we can deploy a questionnaire out to that injured worker. It would appear as if it's coming from the carrier. It can be an email, it can be a text message, it can even be a push notification through our carrier client's app that goes to that injured worker. It's usually messaged with something like, in order to ensure the continuity of your payment benefit, your disability benefit, and to avoid manual paper follow-up, please make sure that you take this short 2 to 3 minute voice questionnaire. The individual clicks on the link. It takes them to an automated voice questionnaire. We use the same technology that we're kind of using right here to engage in this webinar, WebRTC. We also have the option to do click to dial for people who don't have that ability, but all we need, all the individual needs in order to participate is access to a microphone. So that can be through a computer, it can be through a cell phone, and a speaker so they can hear the questions play. So they just answer yes or no into the phone or into the microphone as they're engaging with the questionnaire to each of these questions. It takes them maybe 2 or 3 minutes to complete the entire questionnaire. And what we do is in the background, we take that voice response. So we're only capturing that 300 millisecond utterance of yes or no. And from that, we can tell with near 100% accuracy and deliver that result back in near real time to our carrier client to tell them this is a green or this is a red. You can trust this response. And so it's a low risk and you can fast track that claim, or you can continue to pay that benefit, or in the case of workers' comp, don't deploy a private investigation. Do not pay $3,000 to $10,000 to surveil this individual because they're not working and they're not generating income and they're not malingering. Or if they present with high risk attributes in their verbal response, we can tell you with a very high degree of accuracy that you should look there. That's an area where you should step up. You should investigate. Your dollars spent on hiring a private investigator or someone to surveil that individual, those are dollars well spent. And we can help a carrier resource optimize with laser like accuracy. And at the end of the day, that is what our technology is designed to do. It's a resource optimization tool. It's not the univariate basis for taking adverse action against a customer, for not paying a claim, for not writing a policy. It's an indicator of risk. For those of you who are in the investigation space who are on this webinar, think of it as a tips or leads product. It's a highly accurate risk signal to allow you to optimize the routing of a claim or a transaction or a case for an injured worker through the proper channels, and keeping the people who are honest and doing the right thing and telling the truth to the carrier, keeping them out of that high friction process. So I like to ask the question, what if you could trust the answers to the questions that you really wanted to ask of your customers, claimants, injured workers? If you could trust those responses, what would you do differently? What could you do differently? So some things that come to mind: spend less time chasing, investigating those false leads. How many times have we gotten a tip from maybe an employer or a coworker or a family member that maybe somebody was not doing the right thing, an injured worker was double dipping or malingering or working at their uncle's auto shop across town while they were receiving a disability benefit, and we canvassed and we checked and found out they weren't doing anything wrong. Focusing energy and resources on serving the honest customers when you don't have to spend all that time and energy chasing things that are not legitimate or immaterial. It takes energy away from being able to serve people who are doing the right thing, focusing those dollars and those resources on customers who are really in the honest majority. Reducing time spent chasing documents. We have a lot of carrier clients that if the Clearspeed signal is green, if we know that it's a low risk transaction, they won't chase police reports. They won't order additional data from vendors. They can trust the information that's coming from that individual because the Clearspeed signal is telling them this person is not, this is a low risk response. This person is probably telling you the truth. Or handing off high risk claims to SIU earlier. With our monoline workers' compensation carriers, this is a massive resource optimization benefit. If they have indications at first report of injury that an individual maybe wasn't injured in course or scope, maybe they falsified some kind of information when that incident was reported, they can quickly hand that off to SIU with an orthogonal data point that tells them what area of concern they need to drill into, and they can prevent that claim from ballooning into a 5, 7, 10x claim through litigation and representation and things of that nature. They can get ahead of those trends. So there's just a couple things that we hear from a lot of our clients that they would do differently if they had this tool at their disposal. So I like to share some real world examples here. These are client stories from real claims that we've seen in the marketplace. So this is not a workers' compensation one, but I think this helps illustrate the operation of the technology. We have one carrier client who covers a fleet of rental vehicles, and they had an individual who rented one of these vehicles and then reported a multi-party claim that was $80,000 in sum total, and it was auto physical damage and bodily injury. So the questions that this carrier deployed were, was someone other than you driving the vehicle at the time the accident was reported for this claim? Did you purposefully provide any false or misleading information about the incident reported? So it's a little bit of a catch-all there. We're just trying to see if the person maybe falsified anything in order to inflate the claim or to cover things up. Did you purposely provide any false or misleading information about the injuries? So this carrier had issues with people exaggerating the nature of their injuries. And so those are the three questions that were deployed out to this individual who reported the claim. What actually happened here was the renter tried to avoid the Clearspeed questionnaire. When they did finally engage with the Clearspeed questionnaire, they heard the first question play, they hung up. They immediately called the carrier and they voluntarily withdrew that $80,000 claim. Of course, the SIU immediately picked that up and started to investigate. And what they found once they dug in was that this individual had actually staged the collision. There was a connection with the four occupants of the other car that they struck, and it was a staged accident. In this case, the customer walked away. They withdrew the claim voluntarily. And we actually see that a lot. I'll point to some statistics later that we see across all of our carrier clients where the withdrawal rate goes up when people are confronted with this, what we like to call a graceful off ramp, whether they're committing hard or soft fraud. But this is just one incident in which the Clearspeed process alone kept customers honest and prevented a fraudulent claim. This is one of my favorite ones because I think it just really, I may have told you this story, Damien, when we met in Monterey, but this is one that just really drives the point home. So a stolen jewelry claim, we had a carrier who had a claimant, a member who reported $40,000 worth of stolen Rolex watches. We think that the cleaning lady came in and maybe stole them. They fabricated some kind of story. So the carrier said, great, we believe you. We just need you to answer a couple quick automated questions through this process. You'll get a text message from us. Click on the link and answer these questions. The questions were, do you know the location of any of the items that you've reported as lost in this insurance claim? Did the loss you reported to your insurance company occur before you took this policy out? So this carrier had issues with people having a loss, going and purchasing a policy, and then retrospectively making a claim. They wanted to make sure that wasn't what was going on here. Did you purposely provide any false or misleading information? Again, that kind of catch-all. Is this person being dishonest about some critical element of the claim, inflating the value, the timeline, anything like that? So what ended up happening here is similar to the last claim. So the participant was sent a 14-day letter. So they were sent the Clearspeed questionnaire. They didn't participate. So the carrier sent a letter 14 days later and said, hey, you still haven't engaged in this Clearspeed process. And if you do, then we can pay your claim right away. Why haven't you taken the questionnaire? So the person did take the questionnaire and they flagged as high risk to more than one of these questions, including, do you know the location? And did you falsify any information? And within hours of having taken the Clearspeed questionnaire, this individual called the insurance company and said, the craziest thing just happened. My daughters were playing on the couch, and it turns out that they found the two Rolex watches that were missing between the cushions. So I need to withdraw this claim because I found them. Also, I just want to make sure that you haven't inadvertently reported me to any fraud agencies. So a great example here of a person who was probably faced with some kind of moral hazard and was trying to do something that was wrong. And when the Clearspeed process illuminated that, they immediately backpedaled. Last one here is great. This is a workers' compensation example here. So we had an individual that was on a 4-month temporary total disability benefit. And the questions that we played here, I already kind of outlined for you. There were two. Have you performed any work for which you were paid since your injury? And have you received any income, including from self-employment, since your injury? So this individual, they opened the questionnaire about 5 times. And with our technology, when we send the link, we can actually, we provide this intelligence. This is available to the carrier client. They can see every time the person clicks that link and opens the questionnaire. That individual did not complete the call. So they opened it 5 times, and each time they just shut it back down. So after the claims rep reached out to that customer, that injured worker, and said, hey, we haven't seen you take the questionnaire yet. Would you please engage with this questionnaire? We just want to ensure payment accuracy for your benefit. They did open the questionnaire and they did start it. And as soon as they heard the first question play, have you performed any work for which you were paid since your injury? They immediately hung up and disconnected. And within, I think it was about 2 hours, they called their claims rep back and they said, hey, I couldn't get that link to work again. which we knew wasn't true. But I just wanted to let you know that I just went back to work. And so you can stop paying me this TTD benefit. I don't need it anymore. So again, a graceful off ramp to help people do the right thing. And ultimately, that's what Clearspeed is trying to do here is create transparency. It keeps people honest by creating that transparency. It's not something that somebody can fake. We're not measuring tone, inflection, sentiment. These are subvocal stylistic characteristics that the naked human ear cannot detect. We are doing this in an agnostic way. It cannot be faked or avoided. So when somebody's presented with this technology, even if they don't know exactly what it is, they understand that they can't hide from it, and that if they don't engage in the process, that alone is an indication of risk. So to give you some high level statistics about what we've seen in the workers' comp space, so we Pinnacle Assurance is one of our clients. Many of you are probably familiar with them. They're a very innovative and market leading carrier in Colorado. They hold about 50% of the market share in Colorado. They're a state carrier of last resort. So they deal with very challenging segments of business, construction, healthcare, transportation, things of that nature. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to have a better way of screening injured workers to understand who was still legitimately injured and should be left alone, and who was in fact ready to go back to work or had gone back to work but just wasn't being forthright with the carrier. So we deployed the Clearspeed questions that I shared with you before, and what we saw was a threefold increase to voluntary completion rates and responses from the injured workers. The injured workers actually engaged at a much, much higher rate with this process relative to the carrier's prior process, which was more manual, which required chasing injured workers to follow up. Instead, the claims representative would just reach out to the injured worker via email or text message, whatever communication medium they were authorized to reach out, and say, hey, we've got this new process. It's going to help you avoid follow-up. It's going to help us make sure that you're continuing to get the benefit, paid appropriately. And what they found was that injured workers were 3 times more responsive with that process than their prior process. And here's the interesting thing, because you might think, well, surely the people who are committing some kind of fraud or who are not telling their carrier that they've gone back to work would avoid this process. And that's not true. We tripled the response rate, and we saw that 15% of the injured workers admitted that they were either earning income or had gone back to work when they were presented with this Clearspeed process. They just, in the questionnaire, they just said yes. And so the claims rep was able to follow back up with them with that admission and say, "Hey, we asked you these questions and you said yes." I said, "Yeah, I'm back to work now. You can shut off my benefit." They would collect those details and they would turn off the benefit. Now, I'll caveat here: this was for injured workers who had been receiving this benefit for an extended period of time. So there was a higher likelihood that these individuals may have gone back to work or were completely, healed and ready to return to work. Now, 25% of those flagged as high risk. And this is the astounding detail. As Pinnacle did the follow-up investigation on anyone who flagged high risk in this proof of value, 100% of the time the Clearspeed signal was right. They did not find a single time where we said high risk and they said, no, this person's fine. Or where they said, I think this person's fine, and we said high risk, and we were right 100% of the time. Everything that we told them aligned with their investigation reports. So, as you can imagine, with this tool at their disposal, we are forecasting a very significant reduction in their investigation spend. We're going to allow them to apply their medical canvases, their private investigations, their surveillance with laser-like precision, and only expend those dollars where they're really warranted. It's going to improve the experience for the injured worker, and they're going to be able to catch overpayments much, much earlier by using our technology as a routine status check for injured workers. And the honest injured workers really like this. So you might be asking, well, I mean, how many of these injured workers sought representation? How many of them complained about this process? Zero. Zero sought representation, zero complained about the process. The injured worker's feedback was actually very, very positive. So, what we see in aggregate, that's a little deep dive into the workers' comp because I know a lot of you who are on this call today are probably from that world. What we see in aggregate when we look across the dozens of carrier clients that we work with, large global clients, Allianz, Zurich, really, really big carriers. We work with some of the top three P&C carriers in the US right now. We see an increase in walkaway rates. So those incidents where, hey, my Rolex watch got stolen. Oh, actually, I found it. Or abandoning claims when we ask in an auto phys dam, was there any pre-existing damage to this vehicle? Or auto thefts. Do you know the location of the vehicle that you've reported as lost or stolen? Or did you list this vehicle for sale in the 30 days preceding the loss? What we see when we ask those questions, when we apply Clearspeed to any claims process, is the increase from a walkaway rate of about 2 to 3%, which is standard across the P&C industry, to 11 to 15%. And that's consistent. What we also see is a 50% reduction in average handle time. And that is a result of knowing exactly where you can fast track a claim or settle a claim or pay a claim or not send it to the SIU or to a tier one or tier two claims adjuster to investigate and pull it apart and require documentation. You can just settle it right away. You don't even have to order reports in some circumstances when we're asking the right questions, and a 65% reduction in investigation spend. So here we're talking about time spent on your SIU team looking at those claims, investigation, surveillance, reports. All these things are extremely expensive. And by being able to laser like precision focus in on just the high risk claims and optimize your resources, we can cut that investigation spend by 65%. Those are real statistics from clients. And just a little bit of social proof here. So Allianz is one of our biggest clients. They are the largest global insurance carrier. And we actually had Ben Fletcher get up on stage a little less than a year ago and talk about what Clearspeed has done for his operation as the fraud and investigation leader for the largest global insurer in the world. And what they've seen is 59% increase in immediate settlements. We can trust this information. We know it's true. We've kicked the tires on this, so we can settle right away. 200% uplift in fraud findings. Have everyone walk through a metal detector, and you're going to find more metal. 87% reduction in claim cycle time, and year to date on one small tranche of these claims that they were using the Clearspeed at that time, they saw a 7-digit return. And what we typically see in the insurance space is a 30x return on investment for most of our clients. Some of them more than that, but on average, it's 30x. So that's just a quick overview, quickish 30 minutes of Clearspeed, what the technology is, how it's being deployed. I've got my contact information here. If anybody has any questions either here in the webinar or if you'd like to grab this information and message me directly, I'm not shy. I'm happy to talk. So if you'd like to hit me directly with any questions that you might have, I'm happy to answer those. And also I do have a demo that I can share. Damien, I might try that just to see. I'm not sure if the audio will come through, but if it's all right, maybe I can just share my screen and share a quick demo of like what this would look and feel like from a customer experience for an injured worker.
Yeah, you have time. Go for it.
Okay. So I'm going to share a different screen here. Hopefully this is visible to folks on the call. You should be seeing what looks like a phone screen.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So I'm going to paint a quick picture for you here. Imagine that you are a workers' comp carrier, which we probably maybe have a few of those on the call today, or an organization that needs to check the status of somebody who's receiving some kind of indemnity benefit. In this case, this is we've just kind of mocked this up. Worksure is the carrier, and they're deploying a routine status check to injured workers who have been receiving this temporary total disability benefit for a period of, let's say, 10 weeks or more, right? So they're right in the middle of that bell-shaped distribution of claim days open. So the injured workers opens up their phone and they see this email that came from their carrier and they click on it and it says, "Hey, routine check-in, action item needed for your claim. Hi, Steve," or whatever the injured worker's name might be. "In order to ensure that we're accurately paying your temporary disability benefit, please complete this 5-minute voice questionnaire. Participation will help us avoid in-person follow-up and manual signature forms. Please complete it within 24 hours of receipt." And there's a link here that they can click to start their check-in. So they click on that link and this is going to take them to effectively the Clearspeed questionnaire. Now, I want to bear in mind here that these questions are just kind of mocked up. We can design questions around any data point that you as a client would want to ascertain around an interaction, a transaction, a claim, an individual status. So these are questions that we've tailored to this particular client. They would click this start button and it takes you to this, I call it a pre-flight checklist. Ensure that you're in a quiet location without distractions. Only answer yes or no to each question. Only answer after the beep. And then allow us to use your microphone. We've probably all experienced this when we had to engage with some technology that needed access to the mic. So they click allow, and then they can click continue. And this takes them to the starting line. So I'm going to go ahead and click start, and you'll hear the audio play. Damien, let me know if you can't hear it, but it should come through.
You will now be asked some simple questions that only require accurate yes or no responses. Before you answer yes or no, please wait for the question to be completely finished. Please make sure that you are in a quiet environment, without interruptions, for the next few minutes. The questions are about to begin. Have you returned to work or been employed in any capacity since your injury? No. Have you performed any work-related activity for anyone, including self-employment, for which you were paid since your injury? No. Have you moved or used your injured body part in ways that you told your doctor you could not? No. Please hold while the system processes your answers. Thank you. Your responses have been accepted. You are now cleared to proceed.
And from there, they get a thank you. Thanks for participating in Clearspeed. Now, with the client, what the carrier would see on their side is something that looks kind of like this. So we have a web app that many of our clients will use this web app to initially start deploying the Clearspeed technology to operationalize it without needing any kind of IT dollars to stand up. We do have a very straightforward API integration that works with almost every claims platform, any claims administration platform out there. But we have this standalone web app that many clients will use, and this is just a view into what that looks like. So here you can see there's an individual reference number, or we call it an IRN, and you could put the injured worker's name in. We don't need that. It's not useful to us. This is purely for the carrier's benefit to keep track of those individual transactions. So the IRN could be a claim number. It could be an injured worker's reference number. It doesn't have to be tied back to any personally identifiable information. We don't need that at all. But what that does is allow the carrier to see, okay, for that individual, for that questionnaire, what were their responses? And here you can see that there's an overall, either green or red. And then you can actually see to each individual question, did this person have this neurophysiological response when they answered yes or no to that question? If it's a yes, then we call that an admission and it shows up as blue. If it's a no, but they did present with these high risk attributes in their verbal response, then it would be a red or in some cases a yellow. And then if it's green, meaning you can trust it, then it would be either a light or a dark green. So there's also the ability to go and like download a report based off of that specific questionnaire interaction. That's in a nutshell like how it's used. So the claimant would present with these attributes, these high risk attributes or not. The carrier would immediately see that within 2 to 5 seconds, and that would help them to facilitate with a high degree of transparency and knowledge whether or not they should investigate further or step up or route that claim differently, or whether they should just leave it alone because the person is at low risk of providing them with any kind of false or misleading information. So that's just a quick demo. I mean, we use this across a lot of different applications across property casualty insurance, life and health insurance, I think underwriting for life policies, claims, you name it. So I'll pause there and just happy to answer any questions that may have come through.
One was just related to general liability. Have you guys had an application with on the jail claims side yet?
So that's a great question. The technology works the same in general liability as it would be for any kind of first party claim. The main aspect of that is we just have to have access to the individual who holds the information. So if you have an individual who slips and falls at Home Depot and they make a claim against Home Depot corporate, uh, we would just need to have access to that individual to say, hey, we have a couple questions for you. Can you just answer these? That is a use case that's certainly ripe for us. Most of our work today is with more of the in the first party application. But if you have access to any individual, this questionnaire can be deployed to their phone, it can be deployed to their email, and they can engage in the Clearspeed process. Typically, if they're not attorney repped, that's not a problem. Obviously, if there's a partition between an individual and an attorney, it can be more complicated.
That seems to be the only question so far.
All right.
But no, thank you again, Nate. And we will put this up on the iFraud website as well. So you'll have Nate's contact information there. Please, and if you have questions in the interim, please feel free to reach out to Nate. Or, if you lose his contact information, you can email us and we'll definitely connect you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Nate, so much. I appreciate it. This was up, got one in. Let's see before we get, let's see.
I think that question was, do they have to go to all insureds? So the carriers that we work with who see the most benefit are the ones that put this technology at the top of the funnel. So if you think about, and again, I've kind of been focusing a lot on the workers' comp space, so I'll use that as an example. The carriers who see the most benefit in our experience are the ones who put this at, let's say, first report of injury. So as soon as a claim comes to the door, we are asking questions about course and scope. Did the injury happen at work? Did it happen in the scope of your job? We can ask other questions about any information being falsified or misrepresented intentionally in the reporting of the claim. And what that does is it gives the carrier a very rapid indication of whether or not that's a high risk claim and they need to drill into it, or if it's low risk. And just like a metal detector at an airport, everybody walks through the metal detector. We're not selective about that. And if it beeps, it doesn't mean that the person is lying, or doesn't mean that the person has a weapon on them. It just means that there's risk there. And so they go into an additional level of screening. So that is the way that our carrier clients who achieve the most benefit, extract the most benefit from the technology, use it. Is yes, everybody walks through the metal detector. The objective of the metal detector is to clear the people who are honest, who don't have metal on their person, and to rapidly route the people who may have something that they shouldn't have on them into that higher screening line. So it does typically go to, when we put it at the front of the funnel, whether that's first notice of loss or first report of injury, it would go to all of the insureds across whatever that claim type is. So if it's a claim, this is say auto physical damage claims, and the carrier wants to know if someone other than the insured, the primary insured, was operating the vehicle when the accident happened, and they want to know if the person was participating in ride share or some other kind of delivery service when the accident happened. They would, anytime an auto physical damage claim comes through the door, everybody would get that Clearspeed questionnaire, and we would tailor that set of questions to that claim type. So I think that Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think the follow-ups were, is it for PNC? Like, yep, you covered it all there.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So in many carriers that we work with, to be clear, they will have multiple question sets, or we call them use cases. So in the workers' comp space, we might have one for return to work, one for special investigations, one for first report of injury, one for premium audit. We're talking to the policyholder. And of course, all of those are going to be separate. And in the property casualty space, we have different question sets for auto theft claims, property theft claims, physical damage claims, cat response. So when we have big storms blow through and people's roofs are destroyed, we have questionnaires that we deploy, that carriers will deploy out kind of in mass right as soon as that happens, to determine if anybody's being approached by contractors and being coached or coerced into submitting a claim for their roof. Um, so there are different question sets across different use cases, and the broader it's used, the more agnostically it's used, the bigger the benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a good point. I didn't even think about its application in property claims,
Big
which
time.
there is a lot, yeah, a lot of fraud on that side as well.
Yeah, we have particularly we have a client who writes a lot of coastal property in Florida, and this is a massive benefit to them because as soon as a storm blows through, they know they have this questionnaire that's just deployed out as part of our cat surge product to every single customer who's in the affected area. And they ask questions about being approached by contractors, pre-existing damage to the roof. And what this enables the carrier to do is, with a high degree of precision that they couldn't achieve any other way, to know where contractors are showing up in those neighborhoods and saying, hey, your neighbor on your left and right, they both had damage to their roof. Like, I can submit a claim on your behalf for your roof as well. And the
Mm.
carrier can get out there before somebody's up on the roof ripping off perfectly good shingles and putting a $40,000 roof on a house that doesn't need it. So that's a use case that we have a direct application in market for that today.
Yeah, and I know, like I said in the beginning, what excited me about the technology from what we're seeing in New York with not just, staged accidents in general, but even with injury creep, as we're calling it, as, these claimants happen, it starts with a small injury, a twisted ankle, and all of a sudden we're looking at double knee replacements.
Right.
So, I mean, it is to be able to get there and ask, are those legitimate, and is this run through, and, you know, are those injuries really in connection to that claim, or would be tremendous, and giving them the ability to get ahead of these things way ahead of time. I mean, that's how we really, a proactive tool to get in front of the fraud is something that's hugely beneficial.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you again, Nate. I appreciate this, taking the time to share this with us. And I'm sure you're going to be getting some calls. Uh, and like I said, we'll be sharing this as well. So, we look forward to communicating with you again in the future.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's a pleasure, Damien. So great to have connected with you and to be here. Yeah, I'll also offer, I think Damien and I are both going to be at ITC Vegas in about 2 weeks. So if any of you have folks that will be there and you would like to connect, please reach out and let me know. Be happy to chat in greater depth with any of you that are attending, or have folks from your organizations that are attending. And again, I appreciate your time and attention today.
Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.